Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining the Data Visualization Zurich meetup. Today, we will talk about the diverse career paths that we see in data visualization. For this, we have a fantastic and highly qualified panel of experts who I will say have a certain bias in their career paths. We are mainly talking with people who have a strong sort of like design perspective in their work. We have a mix between media or journalism and sort of like design in an agency or freelance environment. We plan to do a follow-up meeting, which will be more towards research and education. So for today, we have 4 qualified panelists. First, we have Kennedy Elliott, who is currently Director of Interactive Storytelling at National Geographic. We have Valentina De Filippo, who is an independent designer, illustrator, and creative director. We have Marina Braham, who is the founder and director of VES and a lecturer in data visualization. And we have Rebecca Conroy, who is the co-founder and managing partner at Beyond Words Studio. The panelists will introduce themselves a little bit more exhaustively in a second, but first I want to thank all the attendees for joining us today. As you know, Data Visualization Zurich has gone virtual for the last 2+ years. So right now we're still enjoying the opportunity to have speakers who represent sort of like the global community. Also, we have the chance to invite, obviously, attendees from all over the world. With Marina, still we have a local representative here, which I think is important for us to also highlight the people who do this type of work in Zurich or in Switzerland. We have the Q&A open. So if you have questions throughout the conversation, then please use the Q&A feature that you see in the Zoom window. In the bottom line, there's a Q&A button that you can click and then write your questions. We're going to address those towards the end of the conversation that we have. I think that is pretty much it to get started. So let's start with a round of introduction, and I will just pass it over to Kennedy to give us a brief introduction about her career path, the stations that she went through, and where she ended up today. And then Kennedy, you can just pass on to the next person.
Sure. Yeah. So you want me to talk about my career path now as well as an introduction? Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'm Kennedy Elliott. I'm the Director of Interactive Storytelling at National Geographic. And my team is one of 3 on the larger graphics team at National Geographic. We also have like a carto team and a graphics team. My team is involved with like digital graphics, anything from like charts and graphs to full like immersive pieces, as well as any kind of custom treatments that our stories need to have. So we do a lot of stuff, and clearly most of us are front-end programmers to some degree, also visual journalists. We all consider ourselves journalists. I've worked at a few other newsrooms in my career. But backing up, I started working before journalism. I was an editor for scientific publications at a nonprofit in DC. And for some reason, I just had this itch to go to journalism school. I had never done journalism before. I really can't explain it. I look back on this time in my life a lot, and I really don't know why, but I did. And then ever since I went to graduate school for journalism, I've more or less been working in newsrooms. And so that was definitely a life-changing moment for me that kind of propelled me into journalism in general, before which I was not in this field at all. So after, I guess during during grad school is where I discovered data viz. And this was around 2010, where things were starting to get, data visualization was kind of becoming hot, I guess, especially in news. Data reporting and data visualization hadn't really been looked at as, you know, a core function of the news now. Now it's everywhere. Now it's kind of embedded in every type of reporting that you can do. So it was really exciting to be discovering this along with everybody else. And I was a terrible data visualizer back then, but I really loved it. It was really like a good balance between, you know, being very creative and also being, you know, logical, given that you know, apply math. And for me, it was also programming too. So it was a really great, exciting mix. And I'll just be brief from here out. So, because I want to give the other folks a chance to talk about their paths. But so in short, between then and now, I went to work at a big organization, not a news organization, but a big media company, working to visualize a lot of their data collection company. And so I worked there for about a year and just didn't love it. Really was, you know, really wanted to go back to journalism. And so after that, I was fortunate to get a job at the Associated Press, and I worked there for a while. And then I moved to DC and worked at the Washington Post, which were just fantastic. Oh, sorry, missed the Guardian. I was working at the Guardian there in between, and just fantastic opportunities. I was really lucky. Again, this is sort of like, you know, right when data viz was really like having a renaissance in news. So really interesting time. And now I work at National Geographic, and that's where I am today. So I'm excited to talk more in more detail about what I do and how I got here. And so I'll pass it to Marina. Oh, Marina, can you hear me?
Thank you very much, Kennedy. I have to slow down a little bit because I'm not that fast in English. So hello to everybody, and thank you very much for the invitation. So today I'm talking to you as an information designer, but I started in my youth as a stone sculptor, and I carved stones there then. But because I'm a communicative person, and because stones don't talk to me, I changed for a career in graphic design, and but still the touch and feel of working with stones and the smell and the three-dimensional aspect still lingers somehow in me. Perhaps how I work on my graphics or something is still here a little bit. At first, I studied graphic design in my early 20s, and I worked in different agencies. And I was working for the classic corporate designs and advertising area. But then I felt very soon that I wanted to move on a fact-based direction more. And so then I need to study further, and I combined my graphic design with scientific visualization in a second study and got the bachelor's and master's degree in knowledge visualization. And there I focused in the area of e-learning and didactics in the diploma works. And this was a very important time for me in the exchange with my experts and subjects and their communication and learning problems and motivation problems. And I learned a lot for my work about the learning process and the importance of visual support in this process. After this, I changed as well to the journalism area because I like very much the versatile topics in the journalism area, and loved very much the exchange with all the journalists and to work in the different topics and for online and print area. Yes, and so I also continued my education in data journalism and data science. Yeah, based on my experiences in the lead positions there, I started 2 years ago my own business, and so here we go. Valentina, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Marina. So lovely to be here with all of you. So yeah, I'm an independent designer based in London, but I'm from Italy. I work around all things data, really. So from designing dashboard to creating products, designing books, infographic storytelling, really all sorts of things. I even like brought data visualization inside theater performances. And that's the great fun of working with data, is that it could be across any sector, any format, and it really allows you to experiment. I did not set out to work as a data designer. I became a data designer somehow. I studied industrial design back in the days. Then I moved to London to do a postgraduate in visual communication. And I suppose if there was a degree back then in 2006 in data visualization, I would have already probably picked that. It's just there wasn't quite a formalized discipline. So I studied visual communication, but while I was studying, I was already very much focused on the kind of like information design and data visualization approach to graphic design, if you want. And it's actually thanks to the thesis that I created while I was studying here at London College of Communication, an analysis of gender stereotypes in illustrated books, that a few years later I had a conversation with a publisher here in London, HarperCollins. Same publisher that published the famous Information is Beautiful by David McCandless. So on the back of their success, they approached me saying, we would like to do a similar book, but narrative-led. So instead of just having a collection of infographics, could we narrate the history of the world and the evolution of mankind through infographics? And I was like, this sounds awesome, but I have no clue about how do we design books, how, you know, like infographics actually work. I only experimented at that point. So after university, I landed my first job as an art director in digital advertising. So I was doing like commercial work. I wasn't really doing infographics or data visualization. But thanks to the work that I did at university, I had the opportunity to have the conversation. Anyway, when the train comes, you jump on, hoping that you're not gonna fall, you're not gonna hurt yourself. So I took the train, and gosh, there was a ride. A year to create 100 infographics. I learned a lot. I created also probably some of the work that I'm most proud of, like Copyfield was part of this collection of infographics. And after the book came out, I guess like it was a solid business card to present myself to clients and to say, hey, do you have any data that I can work with? And so since then, since 2013, I've been independent, working on many different type of projects, collaborating with clients, big and small. I've also been for a small stint with economists, running their data design agency, the creative team. It used to be called Signal Noise. I think they renamed them, but I actually don't know the, the newest name. But yeah, lots of different cool collaborations, and I'm really in love with this field. So yeah, I'm really excited to be part of this conversation. Thanks.
Shall I take over?
Oh, yes, sorry, Rebecca, please go on.
Thanks, Valentina. I've not seen Valentina since before the pandemic. This is
I know, it's been a while.
It has been ages. So yes, thank you. I like the fact it's an all-female panel as well, Benjamin, so thank you for organising it like that. It makes a big difference. So I started off doing a degree in English literature in London, and then I did a postgraduate diploma in broadcast journalism, and then I was a radio journalist for the BBC for a while, and then within the BBC in the late 90s, showing my age, they were interested in trying to think about what to do with the new internet and how they could make that into something with BBC News and that sort of thing. So I moved from radio to the internet. And I like the idea that it was a brand new kind of medium and something that had never been sort of, was all being tried and tested and a bit sort of, you can make the rules up, which I really liked. So I worked for them until 2011 on a whole range of different things. The big things that I really enjoyed were, we launched the BBC Good Food website, which was taking thousands of recipes from magazines and turning it into an interactive database. And then when I left, I was Chief Operating Officer for BBC.com, which is looking at things like BBC News internationally and BBC Sport internationally and how we could grow those services. And it was always, my role was always about bringing kind of editorial, design and technology together to create amazing products and make things really engaging and understandable. And I kind of think that that sort of makes sense now with data as well, because that's what a lot
of our data stories are doing too. And then I felt I'd kind of done enough at the BBC and done everything I could. So in 2011, my co-founder here at Beyond Words Studio, Duncan Swain, and I went to work with David McCandless at Information is Beautiful for a couple of years and helping him set up a studio there. And then Duncan and I decided to brave it alone and set up Beyond Words Studio in 2014. So it's kind of, and then since then we've grown the studio. So we're now 18 people in the studio, a range of designers, what we call editorial, so data and editorial, kind of we bring them under the umbrella of editorial. And then also project managers and developers. So that's sort of the team that comes together. But yeah, I really like the fact that we're still a little bit in the Wild West. Data visualization to me seems still a bit like the internet in the early days. I think there's starting to be a bit more structure and guidelines and systems now, but there's still enough kind of creative freedom and challenges to be able to do some really cool things.
All right, fantastic. Thank you all so much for the quick overview. I understand that like careers of your magnitude like are very hard to compress within such a short period of time. So let's sort of like drill a little bit into the more practical things. And what I would like to start with is how do you right now spend your day? Like if I know there's probably no average or normal day, but if there were such a thing, like what would be a breakdown of activities, of tasks that you do throughout your day? And I'll just go in the same round again and throw the ball over to you, Kennedy.
Sure, you're right. No day is the same for sure. But I can say most of the time, a good portion of my day is, I guess, editing projects. You know, projects in the newsroom can have all kinds of different, you know, timelines. They can be really short turnaround, they can be really long, more in-depth pieces. And so project management and time management is a huge component of everyone's work in my group. And so just checking in on projects, looking at statuses of things, editing work, giving direction, different areas to explore. They can be, you know, just kernels of ideas that haven't even been sketched out. So we're just talking about the ideas. It could be something that's like near final and I'm checking for functionality and we're looking across browsers and screen sizes and stuff because it's, you know, almost ready to publish. Another aspect of what I do is look forward to different assignments that are coming. Maybe there are some big stories that, or maybe even smaller stories that are kind of getting fleshed out and we need to evaluate them for visual potential or just kind of see if there's anything worth pursuing from a visual angle. So that definitely is a big component of my day. People on my team are researching ideas, they are sketching things out, they're kind of thinking about ways to cover topics visually, they're looking for data sets, they are programming to make a prototype or maybe working on, you know, the final working, you know, story, I guess. Talking to freelance science illustrators at times. Yeah, just I guess working in that kind of capacity. So that is definitely a core function of my day-to-day. And Marina, I guess your turn.
Thank you very much, Kennedy. So yes, I'm now working in my second year of the self-employment and many things have already developed and deepened very good and positive. I'm very happy. And in the area of research, data visualization and analysis, more and more orders are coming in. This is great, which was a wish for me and the goal from last year. But also the classic infographics are a large part of my work still, which is a core competence, I think. What is always very important or in demand is the conceptual translation within interdisciplinary projects in different collaborations and how to build there a coherent and meaningful story. So I work not that much with big data. I have more different research setups and different statistics and sources, and I have to think then about how to bring them to a communication piece. So half of my work is very focused on the content research and analysis, and I have to be able to fully penetrate topics before I develop a design area. I think it's the same for you all. And so I have to think very good about my planning and to have enough of time for all this conceptual work. So I start early in the morning normally, and always I try to have a clear focus on which assignment I have the priority with the conceptual work, because this needs me a lot of energy, and I have to plan as well my breaks for eating, otherwise I forget them. So this is my learning from my self-employment. Yeah. I work with communication experts, scientists, journalists, but as well with management teams. So the spectrum is very broad and for me very interesting and great.
So it's really hard to give a shape to one day, one typical day, because I do so many different things. Depending on whether I'm teaching or designing, it can vary quite a lot. And I would say like 50% of the time now I'm actually running workshops. So the workshops is usually remote in this kind of like format where, yeah, I'm sharing my point of view, my experience, my perspective, I suppose, around the work that we do with data. And I'm constantly learning. That's why I actually love teaching, because I'm learning from the teams that I'm working with. And if I'm designing, it's usually like diverse type of work. At the moment, I'm kind of like juggling different briefs. I'm working with a couple of corporate clients, and I'm also making another book. The book, I would say, is the constant thing of the day. Whether I'm teaching or not, there is always an hour or two of my days that are dedicated to the book. Could be reviewing the data set that the data researcher is sending over, coming up with new briefs for new pages, new stories. In terms of perhaps the common denominator of my days, I try to be quite focus, and this is something that I've learned over the years with meetings and emails, because otherwise I could spend all day just like working on my emails, and I just saw like, okay, I need to stop this, because I was just spending hours every day on my emails. So one thing that I found quite helpful was tackling for 1 hour my email every morning before I start working, and then stop and don't touch it until later on in the evening. So around 4:30 is when I actually open it up again, unless there is something urgent that I need to respond to. I'm not tempted to answer any emails during the day. It's just solid work. And I find that approach actually works pretty well. Similarly for meetings, I put actually a rule in my week where every Tuesday I try not to have any meetings, to have a full day of work. Again, try to focus. Something that, I don't know, it's still a bit of a pilot. It doesn't always work, but yeah.
That is so smart. I love that idea.
Cool, Rebecca.
Thank you. We tried like no meeting Wednesdays once, but it was really hard. When clients want a meeting, you can't say we don't do meetings on a Wednesday, but you definitely need to put time aside for it. So I kind of divided this into, I think I divided it into thirds in some ways, and it's, I think a third of my time in general is about client work. So that's about checking in with the teams. That might be talking to a client. That might be reviewing something. I still kind of have that kind of journalism bit in me that wants to still have a look at the story on things. And then a third of my time is on new business. So to Marina's point, you've kind of got to keep thinking about what's coming through the pipeline and that sort of thing. And yeah, so looking ahead. So we're currently looking ahead to sort of October onwards and what's going to come through. And then a third of my time is the running the business now, which is very much making sure people get paid, what our COVID policy is, how many people we're allowed in the studio, currently what our dog policy is, because several of the team have got dogs in lockdown and now want to bring them in. So it's the rules around dogs and how many you have in and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's very varied, which is what I like.
All right, thank you all. I want to quickly drill down into Valentina and Marina's answer, because as I understand it, Kennedy and Rebecca, you both work with an established team. Kennedy, obviously, at the organization, Rebecca, both at the organization and probably with your clients. Valentina and Marina, how do you typically work in a project? Is it mostly like you all on your own with one client or a client team, or do you also like form ad hoc project teams? How does that look like? Maybe Valentina, you go first, and then we can go to Marina.
Yeah, sure. It really depends on the project and the scope of the project. I would say on small type of projects where the scope is quite defined, is contained, I tend to work individually, like by myself, with the client. Then I would get a brief. I would present the idea, get some feedback, and then crack on with the whole process from concepting to final execution by myself. In larger briefs and larger projects, then I would work with a team. At the moment, for example, that I'm working on the book, we've got 7 or 8 people involved, from the senior editor, the junior editor, the 2 co-authors that I'm working with, 3 data researchers. I've got an internship also that is helping me out. So yeah, many different members of the team.
Yes, in my case, it's very different. But normally I work together with researcher, and there we need a lot of time just to analyze the subjects and to think about the storytelling. So where is the goal of the communication? Where is the really clear goal? Because this, I think, it's very important. Otherwise, the public cannot understand what we want to communicate. And so this is always really difficult because we have not somehow a regular plan how we do that. So it's always a lot of discussion and iterations of the work. And I think in the beginning, it's always really hard to understand how I am working for my clients or the researcher. They say always in the end, okay, that was a really interesting travel together, because in the beginning, I'm working really abstractly. So they cannot see exactly how I form the final graphics. I have to work with more abstract forms or designs. And then in all the iteration, it comes clearer and clearer. And in the end, I hope it's on the point. Yeah, so the biggest challenge is always to tackle all the collaborations with the different people and to give them enough insight how I'm working, and so they feel fine together, and to go further together. So this is always somehow a little challenge, but a very interesting challenge.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Nevertheless, though, I'm curious, Kennedy, maybe you could briefly talk about, you mentioned that for you, it was both design and development. We just heard from Valentina that she works with additional developers who support her with that. How much of sort of like the data visualization process in terms of, you know, data collection, cleaning, formatting, designing, implementing, like actually programming the visualizations, how much do you do all by yourself, and how much is sort of like shared among team members?
Oh, that's a good question, but I'm going to give you a frustrating answer. It just depends. I think that our team is pretty small relative. Well, I mean, it's big or small depending on your comparison. There are definitely teams, news teams, who have more graphics folks than we do, and you know, some people only have one person. So we have about 10 people on my team right now, and so you know, some projects are you know, data charts and graphs. And, you know, we definitely want to, you know, make them look and feel really nice and approachable to our readers. Some projects are a little, I mean, I call them data projects because most information you could probably, say is data to some degree of that word. Some projects are like these, big kind of immersive storytelling experiences, like what the birth of the solar system was like, and we take readers through, that kind of like sciencey topic, and that would be a little dev heavy, a little design heavy, but not data visualization in sort of the sense of the word that we probably mean it today. So it really depends. I mean, I think that design, no matter what anybody says, but I think design in this field is very technical, or can be at times. I feel design around information, especially data, needs to be purposeful and meaningful. And a lot of times it can have extra, flourishes and embellishments, and that's great too. But it absolutely has to get that piece of it right. And so, I like that aspect of it. That's kind of the design that I can do best. I'm not really a great designer otherwise. So it really depends on the topic and on the subject and on the project. But there's definitely lots of variation, project to project.
Gotcha. Maybe let's throw this ball also over to Rebecca. As you are leading a team that is interdisciplinary, and you said you have a couple of different roles involved on a project basis, how much do you see sort of like the necessity for collaboration, or are there also instances where it's sort of like, one person alone just can do it all by themselves, or is that desirable even, or is that even like counterproductive in your view? I'm trying to get at a little bit, if people are here who are curious to decide, should I be a generalist and know everything, or should I be an expert in one field and rely on collaborations so that they can get an understanding of how does it work in the real world?
I think there are not many people that can do everything. I think there are those that can, I think, are amazing. But I think it's really hard. And I think you're kind of like a bit of a polymath if you can do that. I think it's amazing if you can do that. And kudos to those people that can, because they're very lucky. I think most people are really good at a particular thing. They might be quite good at lots of other things, but they're probably really good at a particular thing. And we tend to be more focused on that. So everything for us is about the team. You might notice if you looked at our website on our projects, we never list out who's worked on the project or individuals, because it may have gone through lots of different people in the studio. And it's about the team and the people together working on it. So every project will probably have a designer, a kind of research/data person who could also usually write as well. So we tend to get kind of data journalists who can do the data analysis and do the writing. And then a project manager who will oversee it. And then they work as a really tight-knit team. And between the three of them, often they can produce amazing things. And then if it's interactive, we then have a developer. So we have a very small development team. For animation, we tend to go externally for animation, because there are some amazing freelance animators out there, and often it depends on what kind of projects you want to do to get the right animator. And the same with illustrators, actually, as well. We tend to go externally to find illustrators, because you want to find the right type of illustration style for the project that you're working on. And again, there's amazing illustrators out there, so we want to go to the best ones for that. So yeah, I definitely think for us, it's about the teamwork.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Marina, let me also throw this over to you. As you have been working like in the newsroom, or sort of like at a larger company where you had many different colleagues, now you made the transition into being independent. How much sorry, I should also preface, and you have also invested in sort of like your own education into the area of data science. So how much do you see yourself as, again, sort of like an expert in a more narrow field, or a generalist with sort of like a more wider skill set? What do you see for you being sort of like the right mix, I guess, of expertise and diversity of skills?
I think I'm more in the area of building bridge somehow. So as well as teacher, but as well in my work. So I'm not that much into technical data skills like my other panelists. I think I'm really more working classical in communication design, and I'm trying to yes, developing the pieces in the collaboration with my partners. So, but I think not that I'm a generalist. So I work really specific and more in the science part now. Before it was more in the news area. And there it was very important just to think about all my people in the team. So what are the skills from them, and to support them as well, very well. And to think about how to build new works there, and to think about what are the skills in my team, and then to combine team members and ideas from the journalists, ideas from us, and so to push the area. So there it was more the management thing, or the communicative part, and as well a lot of supporting the team members as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you so much. I would like to shift for the sort of like remainder of the time regarding, like, right now we've talked about sort of like the core of your work. Valentina already alluded to that there is sort of like tangential or sort of like other work around that core sort of like work. Valentina, you mentioned books, you mentioned giving workshops. Could you briefly give us a rundown of like, what are all the other things that you're engaged in, and maybe just like tell us what your motivation is to do that?
Yeah, I would say teaching was something that really came to me as like, would you like to try? And I was like kind of timid at first and kind of shy and thinking, I don't know, maybe like really like fighting the imposter syndrome. I don't really have anything that I can teach, you know, like I'm not an expert here. But it was The Guardian, the first one that approached me. So I thought, well, if The Guardian is actually creating masterclasses and they want me on the roster of masterclasses, maybe I should give it a go. And this was 2013. And I give it a go, and I loved it. I mean, it's a lot of work in terms of preparation. Teaching is kind of like formalizing a process. Is the framework of the reasons, right, that you're taking. And sometimes when you're designing, it becomes kind of like innate or second nature. You don't really think about, why am I deciding that? Or why am I doing things in a certain way? You just do things in a certain way. But teaching is kind of like putting this decision in a format that then other people can follow and can apply. And I really like the space they actually created in my practice of reflection, just thinking back, and also become a bit more critical about my work, to really think about the process than to explain it to others. And also, like, as I said before, what I really like of these almost like side practice that then became like 50% of what I do now was the learning. I've been learning a lot from other people's experiences, because everybody has a unique perspective, has a unique approach of and different challenges as well, right, of working with data. So in every session, there is something that they take away with me. So I love that. And then the books, as well as the self-initiated projects, are very much part of my practice. I suppose from the beginning, it's just this space that I try to cut out from commercial work to just re-energize, to find my creative soul. I don't know, like I feel like every number of years you feel a bit like beaten up and you just need the fresh breath of like the fresh air of thinking like, okay, now I just want to play, I just want to have fun, I just want to explore, I want to learn about something that I'm really passionate about, I want to collaborate with great minds. So I always try to cut the time to create projects that are not done for money or to pay my bills, but because they enrich the soul and they fuel what I do.
Fantastic. Rebecca, I see you nodding strongly. Do you quickly want to talk about what maybe also from a studio's perspective you're doing that is not purely client services, but sort of like tangential around that?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we're trying to do is get young people interested in the industry, because we think there's loads of opportunities within data visualization and not everybody really knows about it, especially sort of, younger people maybe from underprivileged locations in London and things like that. So we're trying to we do a thing where you can have a virtual coffee with a member of the team. So this is often people that are actually already at university at that point, but we're also trying to introduce it into sort of some themes. So that, so you just email coffee at Beyond Word Studio and you kind of get, and if you're interested in design, we'll get a designer to sort of do a half-hour video chat with someone that's interested in going into design or the data side or whatever it might be. So I think for us, what we're trying to do is really bring on skills and bring more diversity as well into the industry as well, just to try and grow it a lot, because there's so much potential out there. And there's a lot of work out there. There's a massive market out there. Data visualization is in a lot of places now, and it's such a fantastically interesting and creative field for so many different disciplines that, we just want to get more and more people involved. So that's kind of a lot of what we're trying to do at the moment. And we work quite closely with LCC in London on that as well, and their data visualization degrees. So yes, that's one of our key things. So if anyone wants a virtual coffee, you can just email us.
Great. Fantastic offering. So people in the all our attendees probably storm the Calendly link or whatever Beyond Words provides. Kennedy, do you want to round this up with a tangential work that you might be doing outside of the work for National Geographic?
Oh, that's another great question. I think you could do a lot of different things in news to aid your work. For me, it comes down in the past, I've done a lot of stuff like meetups and just kind of thrown myself into whatever local scene there was at the time. But now I feel like the strongest thing I do is just consume media from a lot of different organizations. Like I read news across a lot of different sites. I look at graphics from all over the place, not just in news, but outside of news too. I try to consume a lot of different, podcasts, stuff from a lot of different areas, not just news, and not just, my desktop browser. I look on my phone a lot. I know that's not really a great answer, but I just try to, think about ways that people are telling stories in different spaces and not just mine. And it can be visual stories, it can be text stories, audio stories. I really appreciate that. It's a little bit what Valentina was saying about just kind of getting a little bit of a refresh, trying to, step outside of your comfort zone or even your field really, and just, you can get inspired by a lot of different things. Oh, one other thing I've mentioned really quickly is that I feel like it's really great to have some topics that you're very passionate about when you're working in the news, because I feel like, at least in the work that I've seen in my career, work that comes from, like, if someone pitches a story about a topic that's very near and dear to them, it usually always is successful. They really know how to cover it very well. They have some really unique creative ideas. And so it could be completely outside of visualization, altogether, but just being passionate about certain ideas, gravitating toward an intellectual curiosity in all forms can really serve you well in this area.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, let's round this up. Marina, I know that you are a teacher at a couple of different universities, so maybe you just want to mention the type of engagement, the type of teachings, maybe the types of programs that you're teaching at.
So I'm not teaching programs, but there are any questions I can see the data, if we are working in data in 2D or also in 3D. So I'm working always in 2D, but in one study area where I'm teaching, this is the data design and art. They are working as well with 3D visualization, and they learn all the programming language. For me, when I'm teaching, it's more about to think really clear about the goals of communication. So I already said this, and to give the young people space for research, and to bring their diversity into design, into the facts, and into the interactions and into the data. So I'm teaching for interaction designer as well, and for print designer as well. So it's really to engage them for narratively designs, and to give them self-confidence in research and fact-based work. So because in the design area is still often characterized by its elitism a little bit, and it's very important for me to give them space to learn and to work together, and to have really good discussions as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. There are a couple of questions in the chat. I will have to warn our attendees, I will be selective which questions we're going to address, just so that we can make sure that we focus really on sort of like career paths, and hopefully give advice to early career practitioners or professionals. So I'm going to throw this question from Carol, maybe first to Rebecca, and then if anybody else would like to join in as well, that would be great. So Carol asks, what key aspects should be considered and included when preparing a data viz portfolio? For example, Marina has mentioned storytelling and communication goals, etc. As Rebecca, you are probably part of the hiring committee at Beyond Word Studio. What are you looking for? What are you looking forward to see in a data visualization portfolio?
So I think, sorry, you can hear a dog barking in the background. We've already got one in the studio. I think as a starting point, showing if you can show some breadth of different types of format with data visualization, if you do have that. So if you've done some things for social media, or if you've done some things for animations or some longer storytelling pieces, I think being able to show a range is really good. Maybe showing a bit about your process as well is really nice. If you showed a project and showed some early sketches or some early sort of schematics, if you do it that way, and then show the finished piece so that we can see kind of that you've thought through how it's worked. Maybe a little bit in there about the process, and you could visualize your process as how you do it, but again, it shows us how you're thinking about things. So, and probably, you probably only need between sort of around about 5 good projects in there. You don't need to put loads in. So I think the other thing is, if you've got, you know, if on the employer side, there's a lot of different portfolios coming in, you know, being able to, you know, sort of, they're not being too long, but being fairly concise, but have a real range, and show the thinking behind it would be really good.
All right, thank you. Anybody from the rest of the panel want to join in? I know that Marina, you have probably reviewed portfolio in the past. Kennedy, you probably as well. And Valentina, you too mentioned that you have an intern who is working for you. Like, anything you would like to add to Rebecca's comments?
I think for me is the documentation. So actually the reasoning, right? Like of why you're doing things in a certain way. Don't focus too much on the aesthetics. Yes, something that looks pretty is nice, but especially when I was hiring people for the economies, you actually go past the aesthetic when you're hiring, and you really try to think about the problem solving and the minds that get to the work. So don't try to go with the aesthetic of Behance or Instagram, because that doesn't actually sell the work. It's all about the conceptual thinking. Yeah, so I would say of the 3 things that Rebecca mentioned, I think the progress, the progression, the kind of like thinking, the behind the scene, documenting your work is really important.
I was going to echo the same thoughts. It's the same for me too. I feel like we can work with the design, the aesthetics. That's the evolution that you get when you work in a bigger group, but you know, just the concept is really important, and also just you know, in journalism, there's a certain amount of scrappiness that you, I think, have to have just to make sure you're making your deadlines. You'll just throw yourself into it and figure it out. So, you know, it might not be a totally polished work. It might not be beautiful and sewn up, but just attempting to do something, you know, is great, and having persistence and, you know, like Valentina said, just having the concept down, the story down, that is the most important part for us. So,
Yeah. Good. Maybe we can answer Corina and Carol's questions in tandem. And Kennedy, I will throw this back over to you, because the question is, I'm coming from a scientific background and I want to follow a career in scientific visualization. I did all kinds of courses to gain more knowledge about scientific visualization, but I'm not sure about my next step. What would be sort of like a next step for a person who apparently, like, has a science background, did some education in scientific visualization, like, but maybe is not inclined to go back to university to conduct like a full program, but instead, like, what could be avenues for that person to transition? And I think that's also kind of Carol's question, like how to transition into data visualization if you have not a formal education.
I guess it's very important to think about great collaboration possibilities, perhaps. Or to work in internship, or more like in a project as a partner, just to gain more experience and to work on topics and to show your work somehow, just to think about where would you like to work, and try to think about partners, and not to think, okay, I have to wait for something. So yes, perhaps everybody's thinking, yes, I need to study this and that, and of course it's important to think about where is your position later. Is it more in the technical area, or are you more the design? Are you more the designer, or are you more the analyst? So this is very important to think about programs and the goals of the career somehow. And it's always very important to think in which area and which collaboration are you interested to work.
Oh, that's good. Any other recommendations for ways to sort of like transition into the field, maybe without a formal education, from any of the other panelists?
Well, maybe just to add to what Marina was saying, I think it's important to create work to demonstrate your passion, that you're interested in this field, but more than anything, to show the work. So create it, but then be loud and showcase it and put it everywhere. Reach people, because if you do good work, but then it ends up in your drawer, nobody's gonna see that. So, you know, like, be part of events like these, reach out to people, apply for internships, but also maybe go to conferences, submit your projects to blogs, the data visualization communities, or anything that is kind of like can showcase what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Kennedy and Rebecca, both of your organizations like employ people, obviously. Like, are there stagiaire or internship or apprenticeship opportunities at your organizations, or at organizations like yours, I should say?
yeah, yes, for sure. I think many organizations, possibly including ours, maybe had a hiatus during COVID, but I know that they have resumed to some degree. So yes, we do have internships. We do have also, you know, for those of you looking for entry-level positions, like those do come up as well. I know for us, a lot of science illustrators have kind of gotten their foot in the door by taking a more junior role in our group, that its core function wouldn't be science illustrating, but they're able to do some through various projects along the way. So that could be helpful too, maybe looking for an organization that you like to align yourself with, and maybe the core function of your job isn't your primary passion at that point, but being able to pick up projects along the way that do that, that allows you to explore in that area would be a good path. Yeah, internships are very popular in media organizations for sure.
Yeah, we have started up doing internships again now that we're largely coming back into the studio as well, because I think it's much easier for people to learn when they're sitting alongside people in the studio. So that's a real opportunity now to do that. I also think, just back to the previous question, just about the science point, linking up to someone at a university that's interested in your topic, because what I found a lot with a lot of scientists is they're desperate for people to help to explain what they're trying to do, what their research has done. And if you could do that as part of a project jointly with a scientist in an area that you're interested in, then that might be something that helps you get it out there a bit more as well.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. We are coming to the end of today's panel. I had one question that I would like to do in a sort of like lightning round. What would be one piece of advice to your younger self? Again, maybe when you were not yet having the prominent job at the National Geographic, or maybe not have had yet a really good network of partners to collaborate with. Like, what would be one piece of advice to your younger self that they should take to heart, and maybe that people that attended today's meetup can take to heart? I will throw it maybe right back at you, Rebecca, and then you can just pass it on from there.
So there's a piece of advice that I was given when I was about 27 by a boss at the time, who said, Rebecca, you have to know what battles to fight. Because I used to get passionate about everything and want to try and do everything, and want to try and make sure that this was wrong and needed fixing, or that needed sorting. So basically I had to prioritize. And I think that's a very good piece of advice I still give to my team now. I'll pass to Marina, because she's next to me on the screen.
Yes, for me it was very important to leave paths and explore ways. So this is what I want to share with the young people, and just don't feel afraid to leave something or to leave a job, just to gain more experiences. And for me it was very important to switch from the really classical design area in agencies to search a new job more in the journalism area, and I had to search really hardly, and I had to wait a little bit. But yes, from the point where I had the clear idea, I want to focus on the infographics part, and so it was very clear. And then I just waited a little bit, and I was focused on that. And I think this is very important to see the changes and collaboration parts and to pack them.
All right, Valentina, why don't we continue with you?
Yeah, I suppose the biggest advice I would have given to a younger self would be it's okay not to be able to do everything. And I think one of the biggest barriers that we have in this field is actually that there are so many different skills that you need to acquire, and it's okay not to master all of them. You will need to have an idea of the process and all the skill sets involved. More than anything, to actually empathize and to be able to collaborate, but you don't need to actually master them all. There is writing, there is the data analysis, there is a design, and then the design can be transformed into animation and then interaction. You don't need to crack it all. As Rebecca said before, there are unicorns out there. They can do it all, but those are unicorns. The reality is actually the greatest piece of work are the results of great collaboration. So embrace that. Try to focus on what makes you wake up every morning. Of all the things that we need to do, what are you passionate about? Is it actually the data analysis and the puzzle of the data and the research, or is actually giving it a form and an aesthetics and the design of it, the problem solving? Or is it perhaps more technical, whether it's the processing of the data or the actual building, the interface of the product? Focus on that. And I think it's all about finding your process and your voice, and then extending that to others, so that you can collaborate and you can create the full piece. But yeah, you don't need to do it all.
All right, let's end with Kennedy.
That was great advice. I wish I'd thought of that. My piece of advice would be to just consume everything you can, get a good, healthy balance of lots of different types of data visualization in whichever niche you're interested in. I would also encourage everyone to experiment and be bold. And I feel like when you kind of get ushered into a particular career path, you can kind of inherit all of these rules and these conventions. And I think it's just so hard to like go back to just thinking so open-mindedly about ways to approach your work. And so take the opportunity now to just be bold and experiment as much as you can, because I think that's extremely valuable to people like me.
All right, fantastic. So that is gonna be all the time that we have today. Again, Marina, Valentina, Kennedy, and Rebecca, thank you all so much for joining us and for sharing so openly your experience so far. Thank you all to the attendees for being here with us today, for asking your questions. I hope this has been helpful to you. As always, you can find us on meetup.com, Twitter and Instagram. You can just send me an email if you have any questions, comments, recommendations for future meetups. We will probably gonna take a little summer break for July. We should be back with you at the end of August with our upcoming meetup, which we will share on meetup.com and then on social media as well. So this is it. In the name of Christina and myself, thank you all for being here today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.